Welcome to the latest edition of the Shukri Writes podcast with your host, Shukri Writes, episode 2 of season number 3. I know in the last podcast episode, I said the first episode, new season, had on Ken Daneyko, New Jersey Devils legend and 3-time Stanley Cup champion. This episode, I am pleasantly happy to be joined by the one and only Emily Nyman, one of the fiercest and most fiery Yankee fans that I know and follow on Twitter. She co-hosts a podcast. And in fact, Emily, you do the honors and drop the podcast name right here, right now. How's it going?
It's going great. I'm really happy to be here. The podcast is called Breaking Balls, and you can find us on Twitter at BreakBallsPod. And we release an episode every Thursday.
I mean, speaking of breaking balls, like, where's your Yankee gear? I thought you'd be wearing it on the podcast. Like, geez, I'm kind of disappointed already.
I swear I had a Stanton jersey on. And then when you said that it was going to be posted on your YouTube, I was like, oh my God, I need to go put on a shirt or something.
Listen. I mean, hey, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I can't say you would have looked bad or you would have looked good. However, I'll just leave that on the cliff. So
listen, the Yankees are always in my heart. I'm always wearing them in my heart. So
that's a great place to start. I mean, goodness grief. I mean, right now they're going back to playing their ways out of my mind, but not out of my heart, but out of my mind with this recent losing scare that I'm hoping that they have gotten themselves back on track. So I want to start off by asking you, like, what are your thoughts overall on the 2021 season, which has been unlike anything that we've seen since this basic run of excellence over the last 30 years, if you really think about it?
Which is insane to me. I mean, leave it to this season and this team to do something that the Yankees haven't done since 1961, despite having the 1998 team, that set a record. Mm-hmm. Well, not anymore, but it was a record for a few years.
Still a record. Still a record. Mariners, 125 wins. That's still the major league record. Most wins by most wins. They can count the playoffs. Most wins combined, including the postseason, by a championship winning team. And by no means am I trying to correct you just for the sake of being condescending by any stretch, but no, not at all.
No, please, no. I correct me all you want because I will do that too. So I appreciate that.
No, for sure, yeah.
And also, I appreciate ignoring the Mariners' record of 116 wins. So.
Ignore the Mariners because they are the modern day fake news. 116 games. We won 116 games. Yay! You can't turn on a freaking Mariners telecast on Root Sports Northwest and not hear 20 years ago we won 116. But you lost in the playoffs to the New York Yankees in the ALCS. So hold this L, please. For the remainder of eternity, the greatest team in modern day history to not win a World Series. So please, the epitome of Seattle sports failure is exactly in that season. No offense, Mariner fans.
But exactly. So leave it to this Yankees team that has been heart-wrenching and butt-clenching for the entire season.
Butt-clenching?
To somehow also do something that no Yankees team has done in whatever it is, 60 years you said? So
yeah.
And then to follow it up with a 4-game losing streak that they're in now is just like why not? Why not just throw that onto the pile this year?
Yeah, and by the way, this losing streak is at the time of the first day of September, where September Madness usually takes place. So just keep that in mind, listeners and viewers and so forth. And I mean, September baseball is the best month of the year, especially if you're a baseball fan, whether you're a Yankee fan or any team that's in contention right now. And I look at this Yankee team and I'm like, Nestor Cortes has got to be the unsung hero of this Yankee rotation when you consider that coming out of training camp, you weren't really sure, like, what was his role going to be on this team, and as well as the rotation being in shambles injuries-wise as much as it had been. At one point, Corey Kluber had missed time with injury. Luis Severino was thought to be returning in 2021. That's not happening at this point, unfortunately. But here we are. We're talking about Nestor Cortes and its importance, and can't forget about Jonathan Loaisiga. So let me ask you this. I don't know if you're old enough, and I say this affectionately, not being a jerk, saying like, "Oh well, you must be a baby," or God, for God's sake. I mean, I don't know, but is it fair to say that Loaisiga and Nestor Cortes are this year's version of Sean Chacon and Aaron Small from the 2005 Yankees?
Oh my God, yeah, yeah. I mean, I hope for their sake that they're even more than that, just because Aaron Small evokes oh my God, I forgot about him. Aaron Small,
exactly,
right.
exactly. Yeah, that's why I brought up those names, because I was like, wait a minute, no. I want to make sure that Yankee fans who are going to be watching this podcast remember those guys. Like, those two saved your freaking season in 2005. Don't tell me that Randy Johnson or freaking. I mean, listen, Jimmy Wong, loved the guy, but Randy Johnson was your savior. No, it was Aaron Small and Sean Chacon. Let's keep it all the way honest.
And didn't Aaron Small go like 10-0?
Yeah, he did. Correct, he did.
And A-Rod had his MVP season. I mean, what
choked
a
in
team.
the freaking playoffs. Don't get me started. Don't get me started, Emily.
Do not make me end this recording right now.
By all means, continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty fair assessment. And yeah. I love Nestor Cortes Jr. And I can't imagine the kind of pressure that he's under in that position on this team. And he just went out there and looked cool as a cucumber every single start and just did his job every single time. And even when he would struggle, he would still give you a gritty, 4 or 5 innings, and he may give up a few runs, but he still kept the team in the game. And I mean, that's a definition of an ace. Now, I'm not saying that he's the Yankees ace, because we have our Lord and Savior Garrett Cole, but Nestor Cortes Jr. has just been more than you can ever hope for. And Loaisiga is, I mean, how much can I say about him? He's just incredible. And he's only like, what, 25 or something?
25, like mid-20s, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hope that he's on the team for a very long time, because I see him settling nicely into a closer role.
Closer role? Huh. That's saying something, considering that Loaisiga filled in admirably when Chapman was out with injury. I would never think that Cortes Jr. would be a potential candidate to be in the bullpen or even as a closer, but that's a little bit of a hot take.
Really?
Yeah.
For Loaisiga?
No, I'm talking about Cortes in the bullpen. No. Loaisiga is a low key stud. Like, I thought he did very well in that save against the Red Sox, in which he had to wiggle his way out of a bases loaded jam. That told me no, this Nicaraguan stud has got the cojones to wiggle his way out of messes like that, and to do it at Yankee Stadium. You're in the midst of a pennant race. That outing and that performance told me something about this guy.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, the bullpen in general has just been, they've really stepped up, because Chad Green has struggled a little bit this year in comparison to what we've seen in the past. Chapman obviously was unbelievable to start the season and now has totally fallen off. So to see these guys step up, not just Loaisiga, but even Wandy Peralta to come in the other night against the Braves and shut them down.
Yeah,
it's just been like next man up mentality, and it's really nice to see, especially when they got Wandy Peralta from kitty. Apollo, stop.
That is such a pleasant surprise. Hi, Apollo.
When they got Wandy Peralta for Tauchman, I was sort of like, no love lost to Tauchman, Don, but I don't really know anything about Peralta, so whatever. So it was really nice to see how these guys have evolved. And I think that all the credit, well, not all the credit, but a lot of the credit should go to Matt Blake. I think he's an unsung hero in this season.
No question. Like, you think about a job that he's done in comparison with Larry Rothschild, and who just recently was let go by the San Diego Padres. But it just baffled my mind that you had Yankee fans that are yelling out, "Oh my God, Rothschild was such a good pitching coach." No, he wasn't. He literally was one of the major reasons why this pitching rotation underperformed at times over the last 6-7 years. Like why are you kidding yourself? Stop it, please, for the love of God. Like, but Matt Blake has done a really good job, is despite the injuries with this Yankee rotation, and for them to be where they are, and right now they are still on top of the AL wild card. And they still have a bit of a chance against the Rays in terms of trying to win a division. But that Rays team, as of right now, they look like they're going to win a division, and the Yankees are going to sell into that number one wild card spot, in which that opponents who they might face in the AL wildcard game, drum roll, the Boston Red Sox. So do you think that this could hold from now to October 3rd, which is the end of the regular season?
I want to say no. I mean, yes. There is a chance they could hold the Red Sox. I'm not really sure what their schedule looks like for the rest of the month, but I think that they have the potential to hold it. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they let it go, because I would imagine their schedule is probably a little bit tougher than that of the A's, just because of the division is tougher over here. So I feel like the A's really have an opportunity to sneak in, because they're playing the likes of the Angels, and I should bite my tongue when I say that, since we just
Don't
lost
bite your tongue ever, please. Please unleash that tongue on this podcast, please.
But let's be honest. The Angels are terrible. The West Division is terrible, with the exception of the Astros and the A's. So I think that Boston is really going to have to do some work this month if they want to hold that position.
To answer your question, to follow up on your point, they had a 3-game series against the Indians at Fenway on Labor Day weekend. The 3-game series at home against the Rays, the 6-game homestand. Indians, 3 games. Rays, 3 games. Then beginning of the weekend of 9/11, they're in Chicago for 3 games. And then they got a 3-game West Coast swing at Seattle against the Mariners. Then they got 1, 2, 3 games at home the weekend of the 17th through the 19th against Baltimore. Then 2 games at home against the Mets. And then they got a 3-game series at home to wrap up the home portion of the schedule against the New York Yankees from the 24th to the 26th. And then the last 2 series of the season, they're going to be on the road at Baltimore from the 28th to the 30th. And then on October 1st through the 3rd, they're in DC to play the Nationals. So that's going to be their schedule for the rest of the way. But even with the schedule, the concern that if you are a Red Sox fan should be the COVID outbreak on this team. And I'm not even going to go into this whole argument about vaccinated and unvaccinated. I'm fully vaccinated and so forth.
Me too.
And so that makes both of us fist pound. And I do wonder this, though. Do you think that this COVID outbreak could potentially derail the Red Sox postseason chances, considering that they were already slumping going into the series against Tampa Bay? Or do you think that their easy cushion schedule in September could potentially help get them back in the race, despite the fact that they have 6 games in September, 3 against Tampa Bay and 3 against the Yankees?
I think that it can hurt their chances big time, because they have quite a few difference makers in their lineup and their bullpen, their pitching is shaky as it is. So to have Matt Barnes go down on COVID IL, which I'm pretty sure he did, even though he struggled. From what
I think he did as well, yeah.
And even though he struggled a little bit versus the Rangers last week, he's been key to their success this year. So I think that it can severely hurt their chances, because unfortunately for the Red Sox, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I don't think they have as much depth as the Yankees do.
In terms of the bullpen?
Or in terms of the team in general, that they don't really have the depth that,
I don't think they do.
What are they going to do if Renfroe gets hurt, or Devers or Bogart? These are the guys that have been carrying them. And I think Martinez is slumping a little bit. So all of that combined, if any of those guys go down on the COVID IL and they're out for 2 weeks,
good luck.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they have the depth to really make up ground.
In fact, the other night, Jared Carrabis was tweeting out that he wasn't even sure if the Red Sox have enough players to field a team out there. And I was like, that is speaking for the lack of depth that the Boston Red Sox have. Now, I'm not going to to ridicule the guys whether they're vaccinated or not, because like this is not what this is about. There's another time and place where I will absolutely blast folks who are not vaccinated, but those who are not unvaccinated for reasons that are selfish. So with that being said, I'm not going to even like dive into that right now. But what I will dive into is this. The Yankees got a big decision to make in the offseason. And I know offseason, we're hoping doesn't start till early November when there's a parade down the Canyon of Heroes in New York. But early preview, Yankees got a big decision to make. Aaron Judge's contract is going to be up. And I have said that Aaron Judge needs to prove that he could stay healthy. My concern has never been his ability to produce offensively, especially in October. So that's never been my concern. My concern is that he has not been able to play at least 140 games since 2017 when he unanimously won the American League Rookie of the Year. Now what you're seeing is Aaron Judge being able to contribute offensively on a consistent basis. So my question to you is this: do you think that he's worth a multi-year contract extension? And if so, how much do you pay him per season?
I absolutely do. I think that they have to extend Judge. I think that they should extend him, and he should never even sniff free agency. Man, what to give Judge? I mean, if they're going to give DJ LeMahieu at 33 years old $20 million a year, then Judge is going to see, I think, upwards 25-30 million a year.
I was thinking in terms of LeMahieu, because this is a guy who's been the best hitter on the Yankees over the last 2 years since 2019. I mean, that's not debatable. Like, I'm sorry. Like this, we're talking about pure hitters. That's LeMahieu. That's how much he's meant to this Yankee lineup. And I thought that when he was offered that contract, he was more than worth it. Judge, on the other hand, this is the home run hitter. This is a guy that gives you superb outfield defense. In fact, underrated arm. He's got actually one of the better arms in baseball, but that doesn't get talked about because of his home run power. However, I also must add that if you're going to pay Judge $30 million, at least make sure that he's going to be on the field for at least 145, 150 games. Like we're not asking him to pull a Cal Ripken and be out on the field every day. Like that's not what we're asking, but that's not going to happen anymore, period. But what we're asking is, if you're going to get paid, you need to be on the field. You need to be available.
Yeah, absolutely. But, there's no crystal ball, right? So that's the thing with these contracts. Every contract is a risk, every single one of them, because there's no guarantees. So I think that, the Yankees have pretty much shown their hand, and obviously it's a business, so they'll do anything, and Major League Baseball's proven that it can be a ruthless business. But the Yankees have sort of shown their hand that they put this guy in that spot of being like the new quintessential Yankee.
Oh, for sure.
Jeter retired, and now CC retired, and now Aaron Judge is the guy. They got the Judge's Chambers. He's clearly the face of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see them letting him walk and letting him go test free agency. I think that they're going to give him a competitive offer, and he's going to take it to stay in pinstripe for the rest of his career. Because what Judge has that someone like DJ LeMahieu doesn't is, even when Judge is a little bit older and he can't play right field or center field every day, he's a perfect DH. So
that's if Stanton's not on the team.
Right. Well, Stanton will be the DH first. So they're going to worry about that down the line, because now they just got Garrett Cole. This is the window. So what happens on the back end of Judge and Stanton's contracts, and even Cole's contract, is inconsequential to what they can do now. So I think that locking up Judge is important for that success.
Do you think the kind of tier that Giancarlo Stanton has been on can carry into October? Because we've seen Stanton produce in the regular season, but when it comes to October, he struggled, with the exception of last October, where he was actually a force in that divisional series against the Tampa Bay Rays. Do you think that this kind of hot streak and production from Giancarlo Stanton can carry into October, where the Yankees are absolutely going to need it, especially should they get past the AL wildcard game and they go up against a team like, let's say, Tampa Bay or even a Chicago White Sox team that looks very much a formidable threat in the American League to even represent the American League in the World Series.
Yeah, I think that he absolutely can, and he will. If they get there, not only playing the field has been key for him. I mean, it's been really funny to see like the Yes broadcasters and everything totally disingenuously being like, I can't believe Stanton is a great outfielder and it's helping his game, like as if he didn't play a decade in the outfield and
in
hit
the
it
National League.
MVP.
Yep.
So that plus having Rizzo and Gallo in the mix takes a lot of pressure off of Judge and off of Stanton because they're not just the only guys anymore. Plus, it brings some balance to the lineup where they're not, these teams aren't just going to put out these righty pitches just to crush Judge and crush Stanton on the inside corner and totally neutralize their offensive ability because, all right, you can try doing that, but then you have to face Gallo and you have to face Rizzo. So I think that all those things combined are really going to help him in the postseason this year, and he's going to continue this tear because this is the player he is. He's on a Hall of Fame track.
So how worried are you when it comes to Anthony Rizzo? Because ever since he came back off the COVID IL, he hasn't looked the same. And I don't think Yankee fans are really talking about that a whole lot. But I've seen a diminished guy that's not hitting the ball as hard and as well as, like I'm not asking him to hit the home run every day, but you're not seeing the same offensive production in comparison to the first 8-9 games that you saw when he arrived to the New York Yankees from the Chicago Cubs on a trade deadline day. So how worried or concerned are you in regards to Anthony Rizzo's health down the stretch?
I'm not that concerned. He's been showing some signs of getting back into it. He I think before not last night, but the night before, he came into the series with the Angels on like a 3 or 4 game hitting streak where he got on base. What's concerning me is that he's not walking as much as he used to. I think that just comes with comfortability in the box, and I'm not that concerned with him. He's certainly been in the postseason plenty of times, won a World Series. He knows what it takes to stay healthy and to get focused down the stretch here. So I'm not concerned about him at all. I think that he'll get there.
What are you most looking forward to as we head down the stretch in terms of the Yankees and where they are? Like, what are 3 keys to the team that you want to see develop and unfold as we get this final full month of baseball from the Yankees in 2021 as we approach the October?
I would like to see, first and foremost, the pitching. I'd like to see Taillon settle down a little bit because we're going to need him if the Yankees make it to the postseason. Because he's going to, assuming he'll be the starter for the first game of the divisional series if Cole pitches in the wild card game. So he's had a few rough starts, and he needs to get his shit together. I'm sorry, can I first?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
He needs to get his shit together. Kluber too. I'd like to see them stretch Kluber out a little bit more. Obviously Chapman is key. That he needs to get it together as much as Loaisiga's been there, as much as all the other guys in the pen have stepped up. They're paying him $17 million a year to go out there and close out games in big games. So he's got to get it together. I'd like to see Gallo. I think he's going to be key too. He needs to, he's never going to be a high average guy, and that's fine. It's not why he's here, but I need him to hit with a little bit more power and get into a groove. I think that's going to be really important.
But he's really all or nothing type of guy, though. Like, he really is a hitter that either home run or he's going to strike out over 220 times like per season. That's what he's been his entire career. And it's just, and to be frank with you, oh my gosh, I actually was really questioning Cashman at the trade deadline. Like, why are you adding Gallo and Rizzo when we're 10.5 games out? We don't have a whole lot to play for. I frankly questioned those deals, and I've been proven wrong. And I'll ask you, when you first heard about those deals and those trades occurring, like, what was your reaction and what were your initial thoughts?
Well, first of all, I couldn't believe that they made those moves, just because the Yankees have been dead in the water at the deadline for the
Yeah.
last few years. So I was in shock. I was also somehow not surprised because Gallo had been rumored for a long time. So when that move went down, I was like, all right, that's awesome. I'm happy to have Gallo. Yankee Stadium needs a lefty like that he doesn't hit many ground balls.
Mm-hmm.
And the short porch, all lefty has to do is just get it in the air. And a lot of times it'll find its way into the seats, like he proved with his first home run at Yankee Stadium.
Absolutely.
The Rizzo trade, though, I almost fell out of my chair. I couldn't believe it. I did not see that coming at all. I was very, very excited because it was an indication to us as fans and validation, because I knew that this team was better than they had been playing. I knew that the front office knew that. I knew that they knew that.
Mm-hmm.
And Cashman making those moves reinvigorated the fan base and reinvigorated the players, because it put more faith and him saying basically, I'm giving you guys some more pieces because I know that this team can make a push, that you guys aren't done. The first half is terrible, but we're going to put it behind us. And it worked. So I was very excited. Also very excited to see the Yankees go after a lefty again. I think after they had Teixeira and
Oh man, it's been a while, right?
Yeah, because they signed Teixeira, and then within sometimes after 2009, towards the end of the contract, that's when they started doing defensive shifts. So Teixeira became useless. So I think that sort of scared the Yankees away from signing lefties for a while, and that's why we had so many righty-heavy lineups. But Yankee Stadium was literally built for left-handed hitting. It was built that way because of Babe Ruth. So to not have a power-hitting lefty in the lineup was ridiculous for so long. So now it's very nice to see it again, and I love those moves. Not gonna lie.
I think the one thing I will add to your last point was that I don't think it was the fact that they got scared from signing left-handed hitters, but what they did shy away from was having left-handed power hitters in that lineup, because after 2012, the last year that we really saw a legitimate left-handed power hitter do any sort of damage in postseason, more or less, was Raul Ibanez. After that, that was it. That was after that, it was like the decline of Teixeira. He couldn't stay healthy, and the production started to decline and so forth. What you really got Teixeira for in 2009 was to win a World Series, and that was just a bonus added, because we were at the time we had signed Sabathia, and we also signed AJ Burnett to be to the co-aces of that pitching staff. So it was one of those things where they had the left-handed hitters, but as you alluded to, they did in fact shy away from having power left-handed bats in that lineup, and for some reason they got away from that. But what they also got away from was playing a nationally style type of baseball, which I have been screaming to the heavens above for the last several years. Can you learn to hit and freaking run? Can you learn to steal bases? Can we get back to playing baseball the way that Joe Torre used to play baseball during those dynasty years? Oh my God. Look at this smart ass. Aaron Boone can you send in runners to steal bases? What's this whole first half? Oh, this team was on record to steal the fewest bases in baseball. Oh, what do you know? Now they're on track to steal the most bases in baseball since the All-Star break. What in the hell took them so long to figure this one out, Emily? Please tell me.
I think what we were seeing is a team that was built around a league that was so pitcher dominant that it was becoming insane. Yeah. So I think that the 3 true outcomes was something that a lot of these teams were focusing on, because they were like, hey, we're not going to have that many opportunities to score and get on base because these pitchers are just shutting everyone down, even pitchers that no one's ever heard of. So we have to try to just either hit a home run, get on, walk, and then hope someone else can hit a home run. Where then Major League Baseball, even though I disagree with the timing and the way that they did it, getting rid of the foreign substances, all of a sudden it was like, whoa, now we actually have a chance. Now we can put the ball in play a little bit and manufacture runs, because that was something that was not as easy to do as it was in the 90s, the 80s, or even the early 2000s. And it's like, now that all of a sudden there's no huge advantage for the pitcher,
there's no shift.
It's like, yeah, exactly.
it's really amazing when you just think about how where the Yankees like philosophy wise was, especially when you talk about it was very home run reliant. They just relied on the long ball. And I kept saying to people, if you run into an elite pitching staff, you're not going to be able to hit the long ball with the same success rate as you will come the postseason. Now, in terms of the substance change or the policy regarding the substance that Major Baseball instituted earlier this season, the one person who really hated it the most, without actually saying that he hated it the most, was Garrett Cole. When the rule first came down, what was your thoughts in regards to how it was going to impact offenses across the league? Because at that point, pitching had became very 1968-esque. We're talking about the year of Bob Gibson. We're talking about like pitching dominating with Tom Seaver dominating during that era. Like it became very, very much close to along those lines. So like, what was your thoughts when baseball said, hey, enough is enough. We're not going to allow pitchers to use the spider tack on nonsense anymore?
Well, first, I wasn't worried about Cole at all. Much like with PEDs, and obviously it's different. I'm not trying to draw a one-to-one comparison, but much like with PEDs, spider tack doesn't turn someone into Garrett Cole. Just like PEDs doesn't turn someone into Barry Bonds. There are a lot of guys who use spider tack, a lot of guys who use PEDs that didn't do shit in their careers and no one ever heard of them. With that being said, I knew that there was going to be an uptick in offense. I didn't think it was going to be as significant as people were hoping it was going to be, because I feel like a lot of people were expecting the pitchers to suddenly like not be able to throw breaking pitches and not be like, I don't know what people were expecting, but they were thinking, but then, we still had no hitters after that. So I was just expecting fireworks, which we got in the first week with Scherzer flipping out and then what's his face dropping his pants in front of the umpire, like the pitchers just losing their minds.
Sergio Romo dropping his pants.
Yeah, that's it. It was Romo. So beyond that, I wasn't really expecting much of a change. And to be honest, with the exception of Cole having a few gritty starts where he's giving up 3-4 runs, that's been the difference for me. You know what I mean? Like the pitching is still dominating. Hitting is still more difficult than it's ever been in the history of the game. If the pitchers have such an advantage just naturally because of the nature of the game, that taking away those advantages, I think, is important for the future. But I don't think, and we're seeing it now, because now pitchers are getting used to their new grips and they're going to work out in the off season, that it's not going to do for offense what Manfred and the rest of the clowns at headquarters think it's going to.
I mean, if we're gonna put Manfred on a T-shirt, we at least do a Barstool Sports style, and just say Manfred is a clown, and hope that Barstool absolutely uses it to promote Major League Baseball and to piss off the front offices of the damn league. But what do I know? Anyway,
I'm surprised they haven't done it yet.
It's only a matter of time. But with that being said, it's just so from the team itself to more on a more interpersonal level. How long have you been a Yankee fan, and how did you fall in love with the Yankees?
I've been a Yankee fan since I was about 11 or 12, and that's because when I was 11, that was 11 and 12. That was 97 and 98. So
wow, stop playing.
Yeah, so I was like,
you just gave away your age. Darn. I guess,
I'm 35. I'm 35.
Yeah, I guess I am the young one here. What do I know?
Oh my God, really? I'm not. I say, oh my God, really, as if every person I haven't interacted with on Twitter is like 10 years younger than me.
Stop it. I'm like you, 35, please. Lies.
I am. And the 1998 Yankees were, like we said before, one of the best teams ever assembled.
No, the best team assembled, period.
Exactly.
I sound like a homer, but I'm being honest.
And I'm a bandwagon fan. I mean, I don't know if you can call an 11 and 12-year-old a bandwagon, but I was. No. I was like, oh my God, this team is really good. I'm a fan now. And then that was it. I was hooked. Before that, I loved Ken Griffey Jr. and A-Rod. So I was
Wow.
a Mariners fan, but this was in the 90s. Not like there was MLB TV. I don't think I ever watched one Mariners game,
Yeah, I mean,
but I loved
unless
Sandro
they were on
Fatiga.
national TV, like on whether on Fox or ESPN, which they were, but because I mean the Mariners were good, but I'm back in like in the '90s and whatnot. So, but yeah, like I am 29, so yeah, that facial expression kind of told me everything. I'm like, you look shocked as hell, like yo,
No, I didn't think that you were old by any means. I thought that you were probably around my age, but not
because I have
five,
a full
6 years
beard.
younger than me.
I mean, I can't help. Well, I'm sorry. I must have been born the wrong year. Excuse my parents not meeting soon enough. I mean, she's. I feel the cold breeze over here. Damn. Um,
I know. Listen, I got to enjoy the 98 Yankees and you didn't. That's how I'll make up
no,
for
I
stuff that I
did.
got you.
That was when I started watching baseball. Time out. Hold up. That's when I started watching baseball. No. But like no, like that team is what really got me hooked onto baseball. But in all seriousness, like hearing about the home run chase as a kid back then, and like that really was got me like that got my interest going. But the Yankees were that team that really
Mhm.
that was my first pro sports love that I'm still married to 23 plus years later. Like I will be
Same.
carrying it with me to my grave. So I would also say when you look back on on those years and you look back on and I don't know why, but I was watching something with I think the Yankees had put together something. I think it was back in I think it was March, if I remember correctly, where it's basically like Joe Torre's best moments and whatnot. And all I kept thinking was, wow, we really, really, really had it good. And I think with time, when time removed, like we were the last true dynasty in baseball. And it's like, yo, we really had it freaking good. Like, what do you remember most about those days?
I remember Met fan ire constantly, just every Met fan I knew just being constantly pissed off about Yankee success.
Mm-hmm.
I remember just it's funny looking back on it now because it didn't seem exceptional to me because I was a kid and this was the team I grew up watching and enjoying. And because I live in the area, there's a ton of Yankee fans on Long Island. So it
Oh
wasn't like I
yeah.
was the
Mm-hmm.
one Yankee fan, in like middle of nowhere, Nebraska or something. So
There are.
it was normal. Sorry to any middle of nowhere people
In the
listening
middle
from
of
Nebraska.
clusterfuck.
Yeah. But it was normal. So now as an adult, it's like seeing how difficult that and unbelievable it is that they were able to win 3 years in a row, almost 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
Just we'll never see that sort of dominance again. I don't
Yeah.
think. It was because as we know now, the postseason was a lot of luck too. It's just getting to the tournament, and then any team there can win.
Mm. Yeah,
So
you
I
needed
think
things
that
to. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, finish. Because go
no,
ahead. Go
no,
ahead. No, I was gonna say
just
like
that
you.
we're never going to see again.
I agree with that part, but I don't think it was luck. You really had to have had teams that were built
Oh,
for
for sure.
October, like, and I don't think you can luck your way to the World Series without having dominant pitching, like which the Yankees did have back then. And you look back on those pitching rotations, like '98, we talk about David Wells, Cone, Pettit, and also El Duque. And in '99, it was Clemens. Pettit had struggled mightily during that year, but still was a key factor in October when the Yankees needed him the most. And as well as Cone and El Duque. And El Duque was absolutely just nasty of nasty in October. And it was just a lot of really great teams and really, really great keystone players that the Yankees had back then. And I look back now, it's like, oh my God. I feel like today's 21-year-old Yankee fan, 22-year-old, don't really understand like that what y'all are hearing about now. We actually lived through it. Like, we really had it. Like we were truly the envy of all sports back then because we were literally winning it every year. And because we didn't buy our way, we had the core for it. I like to say the Fantastic Five because it pisses me off that Yankee fans forget about Bernie Williams. What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
I think it is weird that he's excluded from
I don't get that at all.
I don't get it either. It's bizarre to me, especially once. And I love Andy Pettitte. He was one of my favorites growing up, but
Yeah.
especially once Pettitte played on the Astros and
Those
then
3 years.
came back, and it's like when they were still like, yeah, core four in 2009. It was like, I guess, but he was on the fucking Astros, went to the World Series with them, like.
Yeah.
But and you're right. When I say luck, I don't mean that like they were like some ragtag group that was just luck. Sort well,
Yeah.
not that the 2019 Nationals were ragtag, but that was a little bit more luck. But I mean, if you're to ask a Braves fan from the late 90s, their pitching staff, they had 4 Hall of Famers. They were unbelievable, and the ball just didn't fall their way a lot of times. And so I think that it's just the luck of baseball is what I mean. That for the Yankees to win that much, and in that period, that window, at the same time that the Braves also had a team full of Hall of Famers, it was just the hits fell for the Yankees. The Jeffrey Mayer situations happened for the Yankees.
Oh yeah, that really was a once in a lifetime. Like, oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's baseball, Susan, right? So
yeah.
that's just the way that it is. And it was just a lot of things firing on the right cylinders at the right time. And I'm just glad that I'm the Yankees fan and not the Braves fan, looking back on this time and our Hall of Famers.
Jeez Louise. I mean, goodness grief. But I can't let this podcast episode end without talking about something that that it's really, 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 really big, really important to me. In which that I'm from New York, born and raised. I live in Greater Boston now. I've been living here now 4.5 years. By the time that this podcast episode is released, it'd be during the week of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I cannot not talk about this. And it's got nothing to do with politics. It's got nothing to do with political allegiances. This is not what it's about. But 20 years since 9/11, and being a native New Yorker, and Emily, you grew up in Long Island, correct?
Yes.
You grew up in Long Island. So you also understand just the sheer significance of this, especially for us New Yorkers. Tell the viewers and listeners, like, what are your memories of 9/11 and the aftermath of 9/11, and how important the Yankees were truly to the New York metropolitan area at that time, and still are obviously to this day, but especially in the first weeks and months after 9/11.
I mean, I was a sophomore in high school, so I remember basically everything about that day, especially because I had faked being sick like a week into the school year, so I was home.
Wow, look at you, you're such a badass.
I know. I was only 5 days into the year. I'm like, I'm
sorry. You do that then, but now it's like, whoa, hold up. Oh,
yeah, that's true. So I was home. I watched it all unfold on television. I was asleep on the couch. My sister was going to school at St. Joseph's College in Patchogue at the time. She ran in and just put the TV on, saying something about a plane had hit the first tower. So I was just glued to the TV. It was surreal. I mean, I know that sounds like a cheesy, cliche thing to say, but it was just, I couldn't believe what I was watching. And I couldn't believe that something like that had happened here. And just, I couldn't believe the amount of people that I knew that were affected by it. I mean, there was no one around here, there's no one around here that wasn't affected and wasn't at least, 1 degree of if they didn't lose someone personally, that they were 1 degree of separation away from someone who had passed away, whether in the planes or in the towers. And the aftermath was just, I mean, our world has never been the same since then. There was just, I mean, New Yorkers get a bad rap around the rest of the world. There's a lot more camaraderie here than people realize. To play. So it was not surprising how New Yorkers just stuck together and our grittiness and the Yankees and even the Mets. The Mets were great then. I mean, they were just, both teams were coming off of having played each other in the World Series the year prior. So the sports play such an important role in our society and in our mental health as a society too.
Yes.
It's an emotional escape for a lot of people. It's not just entertainment. And it was it was everything. I mean, I can't imagine, and I not that you ever want something like September 11th to happen anywhere or
Yeah.
in New York, but if it
Mm.
was going to happen anywhere in this country, and this isn't meant to be an insult to anywhere else. Americans were incredibly formidable people, but New Yorkers are very tough, and New Yorkers don't take any shit off of anybody.
Yeah.
So even in the face of unbelievable and unspeakable tragedy, everyone stuck together, and the teams they went out there and they did their jobs, and they knew how important they were to the area and to the country at the time too.
Hmm.
So I'll never forget that. The World Series were great. It would have been great to win that year, but they gave New York a lot more than just a World Series could ever really give. And I think that they'll, no matter what happens in the future, they'll always be remembered for that.
I wholeheartedly agree. And ooh, man, where do I start? I was in fifth grade. It was my second day of fifth grade, and man, I don't even know if this segment here is even going to be enough to really tell my entire story. But my parents, were both educators in the New York City Department of Education. My mother was a teacher. My father worked in the New York City Department of Education, working in District 75, working with special education students. So I vividly remember that morning. It was a gorgeous ass day.
Yeah, it's clear.
Like you, anyone and everyone who either was living in New York or the New York metropolitan area that day remembers that morning. There was not a cloud in the sky for miles. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you'll see sunny days, you see a cloud here or a cloud there. Nah, there was not a single cloud. It was like sky blue for miles. You could see everything. I remember um my father drove me to school. Me, my sister, my nieces, and my little nephew to school that morning, and then went to work. Um Now, for those that are native New Yorkers that are listening or want to be watching this later, you're familiar with Brooklyn. Like my school was on Bedford Avenue in the heart of Bed-Stuy. So you had the B-44 that went towards the Williamsburg Bridge, and you had the B-26 that was going towards downtown Brooklyn, like just less than a half mile from Borough Hall, basically. So my seat was by the window, and I remember looking outside that morning after my assembly was at 8:45 in the morning. Now I sat down. I could smell the bakery because my school, excuse me, was on top of a bakery. Funny enough, so I could smell the fresh bread. And you know how it is in New York, where you hear loud noises, you hear the fire trucks, you hear ambulance. You're thinking, it's literally like, well, okay, you're ignoring because it's secondhand nature. Like
Yeah. City noises.
when you're a New Yorker, it's noisy. It's like
Yeah.
okay, like whatever. Now I'm opening my book, and suddenly I'm hearing fire trucks racing down Bedford Avenue to go towards Manhattan. And I'll never forget 10 minutes in, I'm thinking to myself, in my mind, I remember thinking, man, somebody must have had a bad accident. Damn, I hope they're all right. And then 20 minutes, 30 minutes, mad fire trucks are still racing down. And I'm like, what's going on? And there was no TV in my classroom at all. Like, so I had no visual as to what was going on TV, like none. But what I do remember was there was rumblings at around lunchtime as to what had happened. And I had absolutely no clue. And I didn't even want to believe it. I was like, we grew up with the Twin Towers in New York. We knew how massive those buildings were. Like the plane crashing, like this is some made up fairy tale. No. So my father came to pick me up from school. My father and my mom, thankfully they're both alive and well today. And they were talking about it with my big sister in the car, and I'm like, y'all crazy. I didn't want to believe it. But there was something that happened on the way home because my father drove an old Volvo, like just like maybe late 90s Volvo down Fulton Street. It was a family friend that was driving down the opposite way. Now, I should also add that I was born and raised Muslim. So you are you're pretty aware of the Islamophobia that took place shortly after, literally on 9/11 and then thereafter. So there was a family friend that drove down the opposite way on Fulton Street in Brooklyn and literally told my dad, be careful, drive safely and be careful. We got back to the place where I grew up in Bushwick, and I remember this is something that's burned in my mind. All of the local TV stations in New York were knocked out. ABC7 was not on ABC7. It was simulcast over on Channel 25. And if you grew up in the New York metropolitan area, you know exactly what I'm talking about and what Emily's shaking her head to, and she fully understands what I'm talking about. All of the local channels were knocked out except one, and it was CBS 2, and they were broadcasting from the Empire State Building. So when my dad turned on the TV, I froze. Like my body froze in a way that I have not froze ever since, where I just stood there for, had to have been maybe a little more than a half hour because I couldn't believe it. It was like, are you serious? And then I go to my window and I look outside and I just remember just the overall, oh man, it was bad. Like the overall feeling of anger and sadness. And my old apartment was right along the J subway line. Where in Brooklyn, it was elevated above ground. So my house, it was in between Halsey Street and Chauncey Street, right before Broadway Junction. And I would notice on the sign on the side of the subway cars, it would say last stop was Essex Street. And that was my very first inkling of just how horrific the damage was. And I was like just in absolute disbelief that this could happen, and that the Twin Towers that we both knew was gone. And that at that afternoon and that night, I vividly remember watching the news because that's literally all that anyone can do is literally watch. There was no sports. Like, so I'm addressing the 20, 21-year-olds who have no memory of this. So MLB season was suspended. The NFL had suspended week 2, postponed it for another week. There was no NFL. NHL preseason hadn't even gotten underway yet. And the NBA season hadn't even gotten underway yet. There was no preseason yet. So there was no sports. All there was news of what was going on at the World Trade Center, and as well as the Pentagon in DC, and as well as what happened in Shanksville, Pennsylvania as well. So all I can just think about was, yo, I don't know what's going to happen now, but this ain't going to be the same. But I mean, it really is amazing to think just how important the New York Yankees became, and as well as the New York Mets, but especially the Yankees World Series run became. I remember that was the number one thing I had to look forward to. I mean, the Mets they faltered down the stretch. They lost to Atlanta in terms of competing for the wild card during the final week of the regular season, unfortunately. But the Yankees getting back to the postseason and getting past the Oakland A's and then beating the Mariners and getting to the World Series, I just remember that in full detail. But if you were to ask me what is the most unforgettable World Series that you've seen in your lifetime, I tell them easily 2001. And they're like, you're a Yankee fan. They lost. I'm like, I know. But if you're old enough to really understand what that World Series meant to New York and as well as the United States, by far, even the Yankees losing, but those 2 games. But I'm gonna include game 3. Those 3 games 3, 4, and 5. And I'm sure you've been to Old Yankee Stadium. You remember that there was a legitimate aura about that old palace that does not exist at New Yankee Stadium at all. So those 3 games, President Bush coming to New York to throw out the first pitch, and we've all seen the interview with Derek Jeter telling him, "Don't bounce the ball, they'll boo you." And it was it epitomized New Yorkers so freaking well. Like, oh my God, if he had bounced, we really would have let him have it. Like, really? You're gonna bounce the ball and what the hell is this? Like, but my goodness, like by any stretch of the imagination, feel free to interject and give your thoughts and your memories and your recollection from that time, because it's hard to believe 20 years.
I know.
It really is.
My sister, one of my sisters, I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and my older sister Amy, she was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic, and she had just finished her 2.5 years as a volunteer, and she was one of the first flights that was allowed back into New York when they were starting flights. She landed, I believe that was either September 14th or 15th, and she then, just like a lot of New Yorkers and New Yorkers do, they went down, they volunteered at Ground Zero, and something that, because everyone's seen the images of the day that happened, some of the aftermath, but I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in a town called Islip, which is on the South Shore in Western Suffolk County.
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, it's a great little town. I love it here. It's about probably 45 miles from Manhattan.
Yeah.
And
you take the LIRR.
Yeah, exactly, on the Babylon, the Montauk line.
Oh yeah.
And I live right by the Great South Bay and Robert Moses Beach, so that you can go over the bridge. And in that next week, the weather was very clear, just like it was on September 11th. And my sister and I, she hadn't been in town in a long time, we drove over the bridge and we went over to Robert Moses just to check out the ocean for a little bit. And for days, you could see the plume of debris that those massive buildings created when they collapsed, and it lasted
a few weeks.
It was insane.
And literally
you just don't see. And it was, all of it was surreal. All of it was, I can't believe I've never seen anything like this, but that was just like a chilling thing. And they also set up the blue lights, I remember too.
Yeah, the memorial lights
into the sky, and seeing those I could see those from where I lived
from miles.
It's tough to come up with words, because it was just horrible. It was horrible, and it's still horrible. And it's just amazing that we just continued on. Life went on, and that's an important and a difficult lesson to learn after.
And we didn't know how we were going to do it at first, because I remember we really struggled for a minute trying to return to any sort of quote unquote normalcy at that time.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, a few years earlier, when we dropped that same sister off at the airport to leave for the Peace Corps, we were able to walk to the gate with her. That was back.
That was back. This is pre 9/11 for the audience that is listening and as well as watching this. This is pre 9/11, where there was so much you were able to do. And I remember as a kid that oh no, you have 40 TSA agents ready to tackle your ass like Teddy Bruschi of the New England Patriots. Like, seriously.
Now I know that the TSA agents have to see me naked in that machine every time I go to get on a plane. Where back in those days, I literally walked my sister to the gate, was up against the window watching her board the plane, and then we left. And then it's after September 11th, that was it. We've never returned. And it's just, a lot of people, they only know this world as it is now. And it's amazing how much we've been able to heal as a country and as a city and a region, because a lot has changed, but there's a lot that's still the same. New Yorkers are still the same. Our attitudes are still the same. And it's just a testament to the strength and the tenacity of the people around here, because that was a cataclysmic event that will never be forgotten. And we New Yorkers, we pulled through, and we're still here, still standing, and still the same.
Time and time again, we've shown a resolve that I think it's really I even think about, and I get chills, even sometimes emotional when I think about like how resilient we are, and as well as the strength that we continue to demonstrate time and time and time again. And there's a documentary that I strongly recommend that you watch. I don't know if you haven't watched it yet. It's called 9/11. It airs on National Geographic. I actually just started watching it. Like episode 1 is a 6-part series on literally stories told from everyone, from the survivors that were either they were civilians, or if you were a member of the FDNY or the NYPD. That is absolutely, it's, how do I appropriately describe this? And I think I'm going to just simply say that it is, if you're for all of you that are old enough to fully remember this in full detail, it's heart wrenching. And it does bring back a lot of things that we may have forgotten from that time, from 2001. But for the younger audience, it's like, whoa, no, I strongly recommend watch 9/11, the document. It's a 6-part docu-series on National Geographic Channel. Because again, as I mentioned, it's highly appropriate now that we are fully approaching 20 years since 9/11. And I will end this podcast on this final question that I will ask you. How appropriate and do you think, how emotional will you be, if at all? You can answer this honestly. On 9/11, that's coming up, Yankees and Mets are playing at Citi Field. How symbolic, give the audience an idea as to how symbolic it is that the Yankees and Mets are meeting on 9/11, that for a 3-game series, the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th, to commemorate the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. How symbolic is that?
I mean, it's everything. I'm sure everyone listening, even if they weren't alive then, Piazza's home run, that was the first game back. What was that? I think it was September 21st.
I remember it as clear as day. Yeah.
And I think they were playing the Braves.
Yes, at Old Shea Stadium, which no longer exists.
Yep. And that home run, I think it tie the game, or
put the Mets ahead. Put the Mets ahead.
In like the eighth inning or something.
Yes.
And I think all of the people at the stadium were all first responders and their families, if I'm remembering correctly.
And they were fans. So, but it was a lot of like first responders and whether they're firemen or police officers, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah.
And because of how important the Mets and the Yankees were during those times, they belong in New York on September 11th. They should be playing each other, and they should be playing in New York, whether it's at Yankee Stadium or it's at Citi Field, because all of the eyes of the world are on New York on September 11th every single year.
Yes.
So it's important to have two teams that were very important to the healing of the city and of the country, that it's important that they are playing each other, and the broadcast can reflect, just like we're doing here. And that's what's going to happen. It wouldn't be the same if the Yankees were playing the Blue Jays and, they're trying to reflect on 9/11 in Toronto, or if the Mets are playing the Braves, it wouldn't be the same. So it's a reminder of all that was lost. And it's also a big reminder of how far we've come since then. And also that even as much as things change, that a lot of things stay the same, that the Mets and the Yankees are still here. They're still doing their thing. And like I said before, that life continues on. Absolutely.
And I wholeheartedly agree. It's symbolic in every way, because both teams played such a vital part of the recovery efforts post 9/11. And for them to be playing in New York at Citi Field, whether it was Yankee Stadium or Citi Field, and I agree with that point. The fact that they're playing in New York against each other truly is a powerful symbolization to reflect and remember just how important both teams were to the recovery and rescue efforts at 9/11, and as well as the days and weeks after. Emily Neiman of Breaking Balls podcast, you can find it on Nyman. Sorry, I apologize. Emily Nyman.
No problem.
Of Breaking Balls podcast. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. I just want to say thank you immensely so much for coming on the podcast and doing this episode. I appreciate you taking the time, and as well as like even just offering the space to talk about on what is such a very, very important anniversary coming up.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. This conversation, I can't believe it's been an hour. This conversation went by like that. And I love talking to another New Yorker. And I was so relieved, real quick, to see your Yankees sweatshirt, because when I saw that you were in Boston, I was like, oh man, I was like, am I gonna like be in the sparring? Is he gonna be a Red Sox fan? Why does he want me on a show? And I was like, oh, okay, thank God, Yankees fan. So this was awesome, and I would love to do this again. Anyone listening, you can find me on Twitter at MSheDoesIt, and my podcast is at Breakballs Pod.
Absolutely.